Welcome to PRAJNA SPARKS Special Series 59 Days of Healing, where we explore one maxim from the Tibetan Lojong text, 7 points for healing dualistic mind, each day to integrate the practice into our lives. Today is day 46. We are in the midst of point 7, tips. Maxim 46 reads, nurture 3 things without erosion. This maxim is the third in the quartet of threes, as I call them, 4 maxims that talk about 3 things in particular settings. This maxim talks about 3 things we should try to nurture so that they don't erode, diminish. I like to really emphasize the fact of nurturing because this should be something that feels natural, fulfilling, and joyful rather than something we are required to sustain and some lightning bolt's going to hit us on the head if we don't do it or they diminish somehow. Now that we have that mindset in place, let's look at what those 3 things are. First is literally translated a reverent or respectful gratitude for the teachers that have preserved the Dharma teachings throughout time, as well as those that present them to us nowadays. Without this lineage of teachers that ensured that the Dharma did not fade, was not watered down or harmed in any way, we wouldn't even know that the Dharma existed. There's a sense of both gratitude for our individual benefit on the receiving end of their actions, and also a sense of respect, even reverence for how much it takes to do this. Most of us struggle to manage to engage a daily meditation practice of 15 minutes to half an hour a day. These are folks who dedicated their entire life to not only listening to the teachings, contemplating and meditating them, bringing them to realization in their mind stream. They were reliable containers from which the Dharma teachings can stream forward for others without any harm coming to the teachings or the recipients. It takes an immense amount of commitment, dedication, and compassion for other beings to ensure that that happens. From the time of the Buddha, there are any number of stories about how the Buddha's teachings begin to decline and then eventually end altogether. They begin to decline 500 years after his passing. It's now about 2,500 years after his passing. We're already living in the time of the Buddha's teachings waning. It's hard to have a sense of that because especially in Europe, United States, North America, South America, Australia, countries where the Dharma is relatively new, it feels like it's spreading. And if you look at it dualistically, it is. The area that Dharma is covering is broader. The numbers of people who are aware of it or follow the Dharma are larger. That's not what this waning is about. It's about the power of people to engage the Dharma with authenticity, with commitment and dedication, just like these teachers who made it available. When we see how difficult it is for us, we can have all the more reverence and gratitude for the teachers that made this possible. Another word for this is devotion. Not a popular word nowadays, but one of my favorites. Deep gratitude and reverence. That itself is devotion. It's really important for us to start unlearning and detaching from negative associations we have with words in the English language that are used in Dharma contexts to mean something else. Devotion is a perfect example. It means reverence and gratitude for people who have benefited us. Not such a big deal. This is the first thing to nurture without erosion. The next is something we talked about very recently, our own sense of inspiration and diligence for the practice. Diligence, another great word to unlearn in the Dharma context, is taking joy, having enthusiasm for virtue. What is virtue? The practice of Dharma, be it listening to the teachings, contemplating, meditating on them, engaging in any of the various practices, is virtue. having our own sense of joy, enthusiasm, and inspiration for that is called diligence. And nurturing that so that it doesn't erode is the second of these three things. This is a really interesting one for us because our culture makes us feel like either you're diligent or you're lazy. That's not how things work in this system. We are already naturally beings who rejoice in virtue. What this point is saying is play, find the ways that you can bring forward that natural joy that you have with practice. Maybe one practice doesn't completely thrill you. There's so much. There's so many things that work. At the same time, you don't want to reject things just because they're uncomfortable or you're not crazy about them. Be both honest and playful, nurturing in the way that you would encourage a young child to develop their imagination, to open up to all of their great qualities, and to not regress into fear. This is the second thing to nurture without erosion. The third is our own commitment to ourselves, our healing, our self-care in the Buddhist sense, which is ordering our life such that we don't flail so much between complacency and insanity that we have to go lunging for a massage or a hot tub or a box of chocolates to make ourselves feel better. There are many, many things in life that already challenge us without us adding to the burden that our bodies carry throughout this life. Our bodies carry a physical burden of making us able to move through the world. They carry the emotional burden of holding on to unprocessed material that we're not quite ready for yet, and so forth. This third thing that we nurture without erosion is the commitment to ourselves and our healing, which is the absolutely necessary foundation out of which things like compassion, wisdom, love, delight, caring, and equanimity arise. So there you go. Three things. Nurture them, do your best not to let them erode, and have fun.
I appreciate you talking about this attitude of respect or reverence toward Dharma teachers and the lineage of Dharma teachers over time. I think that reverence requires trust in a way. And I think that the idea of a Dharma teacher may be so unfamiliar to a lot of Westerners, especially, that it can be hard to really engage that resource. So yesterday you were talking about the role of the spiritual friend. And I think that that's helpful for people to hear. When you talk about the stance of the teacher and what they are trying to do and how important it is for them to develop themselves as a container for the teaching. So just want to appreciate you sharing that because I think it'll help people to develop more of that reverence and that respect. I was also yesterday sort of comparing it to the role of a therapist. And, we have all kinds of things to know that we can trust people who are therapists. There's specific training, which is accredited by organizations. And then there are laws and there's state boards of psychology. There are all these things in place that I think say this is someone who can be trusted. And I do think that your elaboration on the role of the spiritual friend and spiritual teachers and what they entail is helpful in doing that as well.
Yes. And people break trust. They break trust in therapy and in spiritual settings and beyond, as we all know. So at the same time that we rely on teachers and develop a trust, just like anything else, we don't want to disempower ourselves by rushing into trusting before the time is right or resisting trust when that time has come. This is asking us to apply our awareness, our intelligence, and our sensitivity. Sadly, there's any number of contexts where people abuse power, and spiritual contexts is one of them. Reverent gratitude is directed to those that we've already experienced. This is someone I can trust. And at the same time, we probably need to start with a spiritual friend that is maybe not the highest Rinpoche or the biggest kahuna on the spiritual block until we get our legs. There are a lot of different ways that we engage with teachers in Buddhism throughout the various heritages and lineages. There's also very new ways that are developing in the West that are still very much in flux. Just like everything else, we go back to the commitment to ourselves and to our healing, to our progress in spiritual development, our own inspiration and diligence for the practice, even when it comes to how do I meet, greet, and develop a proper relationship with a spiritual teacher.
Thanks for clarifying that. I think that's important you're doing so much to bring out the nuance in everything, and that is very helpful. I also really liked your discussion of enthusiasm and joy, bringing that into practice. And certainly, you know how I do that. I write songs. And it just tickles me to be able to do that. And it happens to also be a way that I'm reflecting on, I'm contemplating the teachings. Anywhere that people can be creative with that or something that just makes them really happy. It sounds like that's really what you're encouraging here.
Enthusiasm is one of those words that I love. We hear it so often that we don't think about it, but it means to be infused with the divine. It's the sense of being so delighted with all of our spiritual practice that you can't be held back from doing more of it. Wanton joy that I just find absolutely delightful. Experiencing that completely changes our attitude towards spiritual practice and the path altogether.
That explains why you like me, because when I've asked people for adjectives that describe me, enthusiasm is the number one that they say. So I will embrace that as infused with the divine. I love it.
You are indeed.
This has been Yeshe and Tanya on day 46 of PRAJNA SPARKS special series, 59 Days of Healing. Tune in daily for more maxims from the Tibetan Lojong text, 7 Points for Healing Dualistic Mind. Check the episode notes for more resources, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at PRAJNA SPARKS, and email us, sparks@prajnafire.com, with any questions. May all beings benefit.